Podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. And everybody around the world knows where Canada is, obviously, and they know where British Columbia is, but where is Prince George? Well, and again, everybody knows where Vancouver is. We are 500 miles north of Vancouver, and beautiful British Columbia. It's in the center, and for our European friends, it's about 800 kilometers. So today, a very, very special guest. Her name is Tanis Jorge, and she is an interesting person in many ways. She is a serial tech entrepreneur and a leading advisor on startup founders of companies and entrepreneurship, and an entrepreneur extraordinaire, co-founded a number of partnerships. And so welcome to the show, Tanis.
Hi, John. Thank you for having me.
So you
We're
have
on the opposite sides. Normally I'm in Vancouver, so
yeah. So you are interesting because I gave you some of some of your elements, but you're also an author, a speaker, and and those kind of things. So give us your background. You were born where, and then you were educated, and fairly early in your life, you started the route towards entrepreneurship, coincidental, by meeting a person that you stayed with, working together for the next 10 years. So maybe just give us a feel of how this all evolved.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my journey actually, yes, I was born in Canada. I was born in Winnipeg, but my parents fortunately moved out the chilly cold of Winnipeg and moved us to Surrey, which is a suburb just outside of Vancouver. And so I grew up there, the youngest of three kids, the baby, if you will. And just really had a great childhood. My dad was very entrepreneurial through his career and very sales focused. So I often share the story that my dad was at a time in his life a door-to-door vacuum cleaner sales. And I don't think there's too many jobs out there that require you to be great at sales than that. And so he really passed on a lot of the lessons and the advice that he learned from those years. And I think, for me, it was a real understanding that if you're going to do something in life, you just sort of take the bull by the horns and you make it your reality. And I had that model to be by my parents and my siblings. They were all entrepreneurs and business owners. And so I saw that. I actually never saw anybody go to college or university. I was the first person in my family to actually graduate high school. So, but everybody was successful entrepreneurs. So I think, to me, that just was a path that was chosen for me ultimately from birth. It was modeled, and so that's where I went. And yeah, you're absolutely right as well. I did meet my what soon to become my co-founder, and he and I were best friends in high school. And we were able to spend those 5 years of junior high and high school together being friends. And we built a great friendship, which led to something else down the road.
What was his name? Stephen Uford?
Yeah, it's Stephen Ufford. Yes,
yeah.
Stephen Ufford.
Okay.
Yeah, he was my locker neighbor, and eventually became one of my best friends in high school.
How coincidental, really, so there in high school, you were probably 18, 19 or in that area, and that you then meet somebody that now you already had a spark because of the family table and your dad obviously being entrepreneurial, so you had already that feeling of entrepreneurship. It requires that touch. You had that in you by birth, maybe somewhat already, but in particular because of your dad. So what happened with Stephen? Did you start talking entrepreneurship, and then from there on in, step one happened, starting a company or co-founding a company? So tell us a little bit about how that all came about.
Yeah, so, in school, we never really discussed what our future was going to be. In high school, we were focused on socializing and having fun.
Yeah.
But once we graduated, Stephen came up with an idea. He was in the United States and had discovered an idea that was actually a business in the US that was up and running, but the model was not something available in Canada. And so the idea in our first business was actually to take this model that was available in Canada and make it a reality, or sorry, a model that was available in the US and make it a reality in Canada. And so, that was how it started.
So the name was that Query?
iQuery, yes, that's right.
iQuery.
iQuery, and it really was taking online credit reports to Canada. So prior to that, it was a very old and antiquated job to get your credit report, and we brought it online.
So the key in entrepreneurship, and I'm entrepreneurial as you likely know, so the key is always a different entrepreneurial ideas. That is, you have a concept and you try to pull it out of the ground. That's difficult and challenging. There are other ones where you see a model that is working, but there is an opportunity to move it up and out of a rut maybe that it is in, and then bring it forward. It's usually easier, not necessarily that anything is easy in entrepreneurship, but it's by and large easier to buy an existing entity than it is to start it from the ground up. Would you agree with
yeah,
that?
and I would. I mean, it really depends. It really depends.
Yeah.
In the instance of iQuery, the idea was already existent, and we just had to make it happen in another country. And I think a lot of people sometimes think they can't be an entrepreneur because they haven't thought of a fresh new idea. But there are many ways that we can take a look at what's happening in other parts of the world or in other organizations and just translate that into whatever circumstance or country you're in. So that was really sort of the model of iQuery that we built. And yeah, it can happen in a whole bunch of different ways, but we fell into it. We weren't excited about identity. We weren't excited about credit reports, but what we were excited about was working together. We enjoyed each other. We enjoyed having fun. We enjoyed the challenge of doing stuff. And that probably came from 5 years doing school projects together in high school. So we knew we could work well together. And that was something that we were able to translate into a business.
Yeah. And then you got it started. And then from there on in, at some point, you sold it or disposed of?
Yeah, so it was acquired about 3 years after we started the business. It was acquired by the company that actually we modeled it after. So we knew that going in. We had the hindsight to actually think about how we were going to exit early on, and we made sure to make the company attractive to acquirers. And again, that's something that people can contemplate when they are building a business, is to always think about the exit. What does that look like? Maybe it's 50 years from now, but maybe it's 3 or 2. And always having an eye on who is that person who can take your business either to the next level or just take it on.
Always look for the opportunity, right? And then also look at the model, so that will the model be attractive in the marketplace, meaning as a company or vehicle, right location, right product, moving with time and adjusting to changing circumstances, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's something that's really, really important. It's a big component. You can build a business and then at the end have it worth nothing. And, but there's usually a case for a business to always have some value when the founders are finished with it. And so I think that's a great model to think about as a founder is how will you even take advantage of leaving your company as a way to make some profit as well.
Now, in some cases, that people that are operating respectfully don't always directly see that, but it is always good to keep your eye open to get external influence or in external qualifications to look at entities to identify opportunity. And even if it is just for the idea of getting an experienced outside look at your company and saying, have you thought about this? How about that? How about this? And that in particular can be very, very helpful.
Yeah, the acquisition process is, you really see the hiccups, the good and the bad of your business when you go through that process of acquisition. And you're right, it can be very valuable just even as that tool to take a look at your business and recognize where it's at, and then possibly make changes so that it can be more appealing down the road.
Yeah, and in terms of value and in terms of to nudging it towards marketability of the business is very important, and outside influence is usually helpful. So you got out of that. Then the next thing that I see is WCB Data Services, and so what was that all about?
Yeah, so that was actually our ability to take a credit bureau that was in Canada that needed to grow its market. And so we went in to help them expand across the nation. And then we helped to orchestrate their acquisition. And so that too was something that we built with an eye of where we would end things and at what point and who would be the acquirers. And really working with, at that time, a family business and helping them to really see the value of their business that they had built for many decades, and to help them find the right purchaser of their family business as well.
And that, again, to get the best value is by using external expertise, usually to identify valuations in areas that may have not been looked at as quickly or as well as it could have been. It usually involves getting a company ready for the marketplace, is to put together valuations and even more importantly, looking at market potential and kind of planning forward. And it's expertise that can be very valuable to companies that are contemplating exiting for whatever reason, to be ready, because the process is fairly streamlined in terms of what a potential buyer is looking for, or even offering something that they may not have recognized by the marketplace, and then presenting it to potential people, organizations inside the marketplace. So for how long did it take you to put that together and get it to the market?
Yeah, that was about another 3 years. Each of our businesses over the course of 10 years took about 3 years each before they were each acquired. So 3 years was our lucky number for a period of our career.
Right. And then you had another one that was Ferris Global Strategies.
Yes, that one too was an opportunity for us to assist another corporation to expand into other territories. Specifically, that one was in identity fraud products, and they were already working globally in other countries, but they had their eyes set on Australia and Canada, two places that we had a really great network. And so we, with that, partnered with them and helped them facilitate that expansion. At which point our organization became valuable enough for them to acquire and take on themselves. So that was our third business as well that was acquired.
So that was an amazing period of knowledge, expertise that you gained, and then you kind of went forward on your own, more or less, and then where did you go from there?
Yeah, so those three, so that took our 20s up. So we started our first company in our early 20s, and we sold our third one at the end of our 20s. And so that was kind of a point where an inflection point where we looked at our lives and thought, okay, what is it we want to do? For me, at that point, I decided that I wanted to start a family and get serious on that side. So after we did that, we had two boys, pretty short order, two boys through 18 months apart. And that was really what I thought was going to be the end of the entrepreneurship piece. But once again, Stephen had an eye to take on a new idea that we had, but to this time do it a little different. In the previous companies, we bootstrapped it ourselves, but the idea we had was, and obviously, as I mentioned, to have it acquired. But this time we were really looking to maybe build something that we could scale together and grow and see what that experience. So it was more about the experience that we were excited to take on. So off he went to Silicon Valley, down to Sunnyvale. And we really just sort of began that experience of working, pitching VCs, seeing our company beyond just an early acquisition, but what could it possibly look like if we grew it and made it a global company of value. So we started with that, and over about 2 years it took us before we raised our first round. Again, that was an investor, Bloomberg Capital, who is based out of San Francisco. And we got our first check, and we brought those funds up to our headquarters in Vancouver and began to build Trulioo, which went on to become one of the world's largest identity verification companies.
What is company identification mean?
Yeah, identity verification. So basically, it's the opportunity to have companies verify individuals for AML or KYC compliance. Typically, we are not able to just move money and funds without some sort of regulatory action that is required just to verify who we are. So that was what Trulioo went on to do.
So what does it do then? It transfers large amounts of monies between banks, or
no,
is there a step in
between? Yeah, so basically we help verify individuals for organizations who need to know who their customer is on the other side. So it's a data-driven business in the identity space. Yeah.
Okay. So that was relatively new as well as a company, and it became quite successful, right?
That's correct. Yes. There was a lot of organizations who had data sources on individuals, but Trulioo was really had a goal and a mission to be able to take those data sources globally and expand it from there. So that was sort of the vision of Trulioo, and to streamline it in the new online environment.
So in that company, you were involved until 2011, and then?
It started in 2011, and I was with the company till about 2016 as the COO.
CEO, yeah.
And and then basically at that point, for me, it became more that I felt that I wanted to be able to be home with my family. It's really tricky to balance both roles in life as a mother and a wife and a friend, and then also being a founder. There's a lot as well. And so at that point, for me, it was important to find someone who could step into my shoes, who had a lot of experience in scaling a company beyond. And so, I think that's another point for founders to consider is at what point are you no longer the best person at the helm of your company? And that's a hard decision to make because any entrepreneur knows your business is your baby. And so it's a very hard thing to detach sometimes. And so
Yeah.
that was tricky.
On the other hand, Tanis, is that I find, I'm the kind of entrepreneur, I'm very good at building businesses, I'm very good under stress and pressure, and what I try to do is bring my companies to where they become boringly consistent, and that's the time that I become boring and I have to find somebody else that loves to operate in that kind of an environment. I'm not very good at that. I'm a builder and an expander, so. Now, the today Trilio is at 2021 market value, quite extensive.
Oh yeah, it raised a Series D round, which was one of the largest in Canada, and put it at a valuation of just shy of $2 billion in 21. Yeah, very exciting.
Amazing.
One of those things you dream about and you think about and you aim towards, but we were very fortunate to be able to have experienced that.
So you have had an amazing experience from the time that you said hello to the guy in the next closet to all the way here. And then obviously now you have you're married, you have 2 boys. What are the names, actually? I always like to know.
Yeah, so my oldest is JJ, and he's 15, and my youngest is Nuno, and he's 14.
Beautiful, beautiful time in life, right?
Yeah.
And so with that amount of experience that you have as being extremely valuable, so where do you take it from here? Then also realizing the most important part in your life is your family, as it is and should be for everybody. And sometimes entrepreneurship and building business become very demanding and are hard on relationships and families. And so, and then obviously in your situation, you have reconciled that works for you, but then at some point when your boys, another 3, 4, 5 years from now, they're going to be independent, be in universities and all that kind of stuff, and Tanis is going to say, what is next? And then something will happen. Now, if I look at it in a general sense, is that being in the San Francisco area, all the computer technology and all the entrepreneurship there, is that and looking at AI and artificial intelligence and all those other things that are going to change the world around us and are going to change the businesses. The other part, which again is so unique and so different, here we are sitting here together, although we both from BC, Canada, but you're not there today. You are just outside of Phoenix, Arizona, and I'm in Prince George, British Columbia, and there we are sitting having an interaction, talking about entrepreneurship, companies, opportunities that are there in evolving companies, and how do you as an entrepreneur identify opportunities and all of that kind of thing. And in the meantime, where at one point I used to podcast, and I have somebody sitting here on the couch, and I sit there, and I podcast around the region here, and we did that for quite a while, and it was very successful. And then I thought, I have an apartment in Yaletown. You know where Yaletown is in Vancouver, and I have to find a broader circle of people to interact with. And so maybe I'll set up another studio there like we have here. But then the more we thought about it and saying, well, how about virtual? So because if I look at television these days, CNN and all the other ones. You have one, two, three different people all over the world speaking all together. At one point, there was hiccups all along the way. Not today anymore. So here we are sitting, we are podcasting live. We're one of the first ones to do that on the podcasting side, and we're podcasting live, but also our podcast will go around the world tomorrow, as a normal podcast, in addition to what we are doing right now. And so in the meantime, tens of thousands of people are watching us.
Exciting.
Can you imagine?
Yeah,
so
it's
powerful,
amazing.
right?
So powerful, yes.
And then at the same time, podcasting, I'm sure you have done it as well. We are podcasting people from all over the world. We had last week somebody from India, somebody from Peru, somebody from China, somebody from Central Europe, a couple of people from locally in our region. And so that power from the internet and then in combination with all the other things that we talked about, artificial intelligence and all of that stuff, the world is changing, and that also means opportunities are becoming more available. So the key is to how to identify them. And for those people that aspire to entrepreneurship is obviously, to look at opportunities not only regional but in other areas. And so what would you suggest all of that to people that are now going to college, university, or maybe even younger than that, or older than that, are looking for opportunities in business and saying, I want to be an entrepreneur. And so how do I get into business? What would you recommend to them?
Well, the first thing that I would do is I would ask them, it's great to build a business, but are you going to build it with somebody? And I was very fortunate to have met Stephen early, and we had an incredible career together. And one of the things I reflected on when I stepped out of the day at Truly You was to figure out that exact question, what's next? And so I noted that as an advisor to many startups, there was a lot of co-founders who were really struggling in that space and in that role. And so I went on to write a book actually called The Co-Founder's Handbook. And the Co-Founder's Handbook is there to really walk people through that process of, should I get a co-founder? How do I find a co-founder? What do I do once I have one? And then, of course, what do I do when I want to exit that career? And so the Co-Founder's Handbook is really that book that is essential for anyone who wants to be an entrepreneur and needs to decide, am I going to build this as a solo person, or I'm going to have someone or some people along beside me for the ride?
If you had a copy of the book that you can show to us around you?
Not around me, but I should have. But yes, not around me right now.
No, we will pick it up, Bill. Maybe we can see it here and then display it on the screen anyway.
That's great.
So is it available at all the major medias?
It is. It's available in every format, in audio and hard copy and paperback and electronic, on every platform out there. Yes, there it is there.
There it is.
So it's, it really, when I wrote it, it was actually to be a book from the trenches. This is from hundreds of interviews of people who have been in a co-founder partnership, who have succeeded and failed, and their advice and wisdom of how they made it work or why it fell apart, along with the wisdom that I found was why it could be that Stephen and I could build 4 businesses together over 25 years and still be friends at the end of the day.
Amazing.
And it's really, really important. Yeah. It's an important factor. It can actually make or break your business. If you find the right co-founder, you actually double, if not quadruple, your efforts. But if you find the wrong co-founder, you can really be an example, it can be failure right before you even sign on that partnership agreement. So the Co-Founder's Handbook is for that.
Yeah, and that's, again, very, very important, because if you have a partnership, if you wish, or another founder, then things will usually become challenging if you start something from the ground up. When it is smaller, you try to build it because it's very demanding on time, but also in terms of resources. And are you willing to step up to the plate if the bank calls and say, we need more security or whatever it is, that's all part of business, or, you have to work 60, 70, 80 hours a week and dealing with problems and issues, things become a challenge. So I like what you did. Now, on your book, were you always thinking about writing a book? Because I'm also an author, and what I say is that I'm going to be 84 in about 2 months from now.
That's
3 months
awesome.
from now.
Congrats.
I call myself 84 years young because I intend to live till I'm 120. So
Excellent.
so I'm an entrepreneur. I started with nothing on my own. I have about 10 different companies. I'm sole owner of it, but so things were challenging right from the beginning. So pulling it right out of the ground, which was not easy. And then I had a lot of people say to me, "You should write a book about it." And so I started and stopped, and then about 5, 6 years ago, I said, if I don't do it now, it will never happen. So I wrote a book, Against All Odds, and it's all about, not so much hurrah, how successful John is, but more about all the ups and downs and all the challenges along the way. And, so that's what that book is about. The other part that is interesting in my life is that I was born in Holland in 1940, and during the war years, and it was a tough go, and saw far too much that we should not have seen, and my dad was drafted into the Dutch army and then caught in the bombing of Rotterdam, and it would take 5 years before they knew if he had survived or not. So my mom had 3 kids, a brother and a sister, about 1 year and 2 years older than me, and things were tough. Every morning, the hunger winter of 1944-45, we would go out with gunny sacks in the railroad yards, pick up anything edible and burnable. And then we were liberated by the Canadian Army, April the 12th, 1945. And I always knew from that time forward I would go to the land of my heroes, Canada. I tried to go when I was 17, and then I was my parents wouldn't let me. I was drafted into the Dutch Air Force for 2 years, and then, as I said, my academically I was not a success story. I failed grade 3, and I failed grade 7 3 times. And then they said, "What are we going to do with this guy?" And now, some people said, my parents were beautiful people. Some people said, "Well, maybe you should be sending to the mentally challenged school." They didn't want to do that, so they said, "We'll get him a trade." Now, my dad worked in the lumber industry, and then my grandfather was a master carpenter. And then, but I always, even when I was here, I was going to go. I finally went to Canada when I was 23 in 1965. But I always kind of felt, in a way, that I had failed, and I had to prove to me that I could do it just as well as my friends that had gone to college and university. So I left. I couldn't speak the language, didn't know soul, didn't have any connection at all. And I knew I wanted to go to British Columbia and build a lumber mill. And so when I came to Vancouver in 1965, I went to the immigration office there, and fortunately there was a German fellow. I could speak some German, and I said to him, "But I wanted to do it." I said, "I want to build a lumber mill." He said, "Go to Prince George. That's the boomtown." So I did, and I took the bus to Prince George. And when I came off the bus, I can still see the Greyhound station here, now nearly 60 years ago. And I came off the bus, and I had my suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and then I counted my money at least 3 times. I had exactly $25.47.
I love it.
But what I had lots of attitude. I'm always believing, no matter how tough things are, I always know tomorrow's going to be better. I avoid negative. I don't want nothing to do with. I have a passion. Whatever I do, I give it 150%. And work ethic, and what will follow is success. I work harder than anybody. Even now, I get up at 5:30 in the morning. I always think I'm late. I always make my bed, and and that's what I do. So, what I was going to say, it took me 30 years, 35 years already, when in Prince George, when one day I went to a bookstore here in 1997, and I opened. And even then already, I've been successful, and everybody said, "Oh, you're so successful." I didn't feel that way. I still felt I had failed in some form. It didn't totally preoccupy me, but I had that feeling. So I picked up a book, and I opened the book, and the book's title was "Driven to Distraction" by Mr. Halliwell, Dr. Halliwell. Yes. And I opened the book and I looked at it. It was about ADHD, and I said, "Oh my God, that's me!" Yes. And I wrote in the book in Dutch. Now I finally know who I am, and wow. Because there was stigma attached to it. And then it took me another 5 years before I went to my doc. There was a personal friend that delivered our 2 daughters, and I went into his office, and he said, "Hey, John, why are you here?" I said, "I think I got ADHD." And so we checked it out, and yeah, I got ADHD. So that was in 1962. So I left school at 13, became a laborer. I'm proud of that today, but then it was kind of looked down at. And it took me 50 years to find out that ADHD played a major role in my life. And so the more I found out about it, the more I looked at it, and then I found the frequency of occurrence much higher than most people thought it was. It was thought to be around 8%. I believe it's probably more than 20%. Now, the interesting part is you were podcast number 252. 203, I did a podcast with Dr. Halliwell that wrote the book in 1993. I bought it in 1997. And so him and me, and there is Dr. Halliwell, is that so I talked to him about ADHD, obviously, and said to him that I believe that the frequency of occurrence is probably more than 20%. He said, "No, John, it's more than 25%. I agree with them. The other part that I believe in all the things that I've done in entrepreneurship and businesses, CEOs, and being involved in all kinds of things that I do, is that I believe that successful, and the operative is successful, entrepreneurs or CEOs, probably 50% of them ADHD. He said, "No, John, I believe 75%, and I agree with him." So I wrote a book about that. ADHD awesome. Unlocked.
I love it. It's great. That's great.
So
it's a superpower.
It is a superpower, and that's how I look at it.
Yeah. It is, absolutely. It's a valuable, if you look at it in the right way, there's a lot of things that you can appreciate about being able to look at things, multiple different things at different times, to be not necessarily equipped, but also not willing to sort of stay in one place, but look at other opportunities. I know that's a very special way to look at it as well. So yeah, that's an incredible story.
Yeah, the way I usually look at it, Tanis, is that a lot of my friends that have gone to universities and studied business of all descriptions understand it, and it's usually in a box as how you manage and do this kind of thing. For me, I got my education on the ground, from the ground up, and I tend to look at it. I understand. I've always listened very closely and looked at how should a company or entities be managed. But I have a tendency to go outside of the box and say, what happens if we did this? Or how about this doing that? It makes my friends that are live in the box sometimes very uncomfortable and say, no, you can do that, but that's what I do. And it has made me successful. So
in many ways, so one of the things that we created, so once the book was written, we started a company called the Co-Founders Hub. And into what you say there, it's a very interesting perspective, because what I noted was that a lot of times people don't actually take a self-check on what it is that makes them an entrepreneur. What is the thing that that's going to make them succeed? What is some things about themselves that is possibly going to be a hindrance or a liability in their business? And sometimes we need to look at ourselves really deep and just have that knowledge. In your case, you discovered your ADHD and you looked at that as a piece of your entrepreneurial story and your journey, and you used it in a way that was an advantage, but you also probably recognized where that can be sometimes a liability. So we created the Co-Founder Mastery Series, and the big portion of that is to actually help entrepreneurs truly understand what they bring to the table. Often for us, it's about how do you find a co-founder, but if you don't know who you are and what it is you need to fill in those gaps, then you might just find the wrong person or someone who's redundant when you've already got something that they need. So that's one of the things, is really being able to, as an entrepreneur, do a self-check and recognize what is it that I bring to the table, and how can I turn all these parts about me and maximize them and be more efficient and fill in the gaps where I need to with a co-founder. So our Co-Founder Mastery Series is exactly that. And it's to find out more about yourself.
And I 100% agree with you, Tanis. The other part that is a benefit to me is attitude, passion, work ethic, and that everything is possible. And so the other part that's important to me is that, and circumstances sometimes, the health is critically important, fitness is important, and so in 2008, I had a case of diverticulitis, and that breached is where toxins get into your system, and then you have about 48 hours to get it fixed, or otherwise it will kill you. So I came that close.
Wow.
After that, I said, I'm going to have to be more. My wife is a vegetarian. I'm probably vegan, but then not as much as I should have been, and I didn't listen as well. She will watch this and she say, I told you. No, I know she did. So in any event, then I was one of those guys that towards the end of the year we say, I'm going to do this, that, and I'm going to buy a membership to a gym. And then I go for 2 weeks, and then I find 100 reasons as why I can't go anymore. And so we do that every year. So what I did is I knew I had to do something more serious. And so I got a trainer, got a membership to the gym, and so started training in earnest. And then after about six years or so of training, somebody came up to me or us and say, hey, John, have you ever thought about competing? Now I'm already in my 70s, and saying, me? He said, yeah. And I thought, well, why not? Gives me a motivation, right? So brings me to the gym. So I did that, and so in 2018 I competed Northern British Columbia, became third in bodybuilding, second in physique, competed in the provincials in BC, came in third in physique and second in bodybuilding, and that qualified me for the nationals and the Arnolds. And so.
Hey, John, we just lost her.
Oh no. We still there?
Looks like we lost her. Yeah. It just happened. Just now. So she's frozen on the screen. Yeah. So it's called disconnected. So join back in. For the live stream, I'll just end the live stream right now. I'll end the live stream right now.
Okay.